Good looking graphic right there. Super Tuesday from the Oklahoman's video studios. Good evening. I'm Dave Morris. Election 2016. Tonight we take a look at how Oklahoma fits into the national political stage. We have a cast of thousands, lots of experts joining us throughout the night. We'll be live right here from the Oklahoman's video studio. And if the guys in the booth want to take that wide shot to take a look at what we're playing with here. Various election results coming in from the Oklahoma State Election Board. We will get to Bryan Dean, who is standing by on the phone here shortly. But right now I'm going to bring in Kelly Dyer-Fry, editor of the Oklahoman, and Phil O'Connor, star of MSNBC fame. You may have seen him earlier this week. He had a chance to talk with Chris Jansing, and that's just an example of the attention Super Tuesday is bringing from around the country, Oklahoma playing its part, Phil.
Yeah, it's a big night for us here in Oklahoma, and it's one that I think they first envisioned when they came up with the idea of Super Tuesday, making states like Oklahoma matter. And I think the visits from all the presidential candidates in the last few days certainly are an indicator of how important they consider the state. There's a lot at stake tonight, and the race for a lot of these people is really close.
Voter turnout's always a huge issue. It's always a big storyline in any sort of election. And Kelly, what did you see tonight when you went to go vote?
Well, I voted in Jones, Oklahoma. And as I was leaving, the parking lot was really filling up because I dashed out there toward the end of the day, and it was really starting to fill up. So, and that's a very small precinct.
Let me explain again the lay of the land here at the studio, and you'll see the election results perhaps flash on our news desk behind that. And right now you see Martin J. O'Malley and Starlock, and you're wondering, wait a minute, that's not Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. This is a feed from the Oklahoma State Election Board, which will update throughout the night. And as we go through the night, you'll see those election results updated automatically. It may fade to black there. You see an example right there. We expect those numbers to change throughout the night. Phil, I'm going to bring it back to you as we bring in Bryan Dean from the State County Election Board to talk about what we saw today voter turnout wise.
Yeah, and I'd just be curious to know from Bryan, I mean, we've heard in the first 3 days of early voting last week through Saturday that record turnout. So Bryan, I mean, is that what happened again today? Are we seeing big numbers at the polls?
Well, we won't know for sure until we start getting results coming in and until we have the votes counted, because there's no way for us to monitor in real time, how many people are voting. We don't know for certain until they actually come in and the precinct workers start uploading the results into the machines. But we do know from the early voting that we had about 35,000 votes cast during that 3-day early voting period. If you compare that to 2012, we had just under 15,000, so it was well more than double what we had in 2012. Keeping in mind that in 2012 we had a much lower turnout than we did in 2008, when we did not have an incumbent president running for re-election, and we're expecting certainly a heavier turnout than we had 4 years ago, and we'll just have to see whether it meets 2008, which was our record turnout, which was a little over 740,000 voters, and so I don't know if we'll get there tonight, but we'll see as these votes start coming in.
Brian, excuse me, Phil, I thought it was interesting that we had so many more, a rush to register to vote, and some people that switched parties as well. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, we had an incredible surge in voter registration in the weeks before the election. We do an official count on January 15th of each year, and between that January 15th count and the deadline on February 5th, we had a net increase of 30,000 voters. So that is a lot of voters to come in that short period. The folks who've been here a long time tell me that that rivals what we would normally see in a general election period for president rather than a primary. So it's certainly a lot of new voters, and I think just from the beginning of the year we've processed well over 60,000 voter registrations. That would include address changes and party affiliation changes and all those sorts of things as well. And so we had to bring in some extra folks to help process all of those and get them to the counties, and they were really working hard to get all of those done before election day to make sure they could get them all in the books and everything, because it was really just an incredible number of registrations.
Were those spread across the whole state, Brian, or were they clustered in metropolitan areas, or?
It's spread across the whole state. I mean, the trend you really see is more as it regards to party. Of those 30,000 new, net increase in voters, 20,000 of them were Republicans, and about 5,000 each were Democrats and Independents. it's not unusual. We've seen a long-term trend of more Republican voters and fewer Democrats in the state and more independents, but the rate is what's interesting there, because independents actually had been increasing at a higher rate than Republicans even, but in this surge we've seen here just before the election, it's been a really big surge in Republican voters, and that also reflects in the party changes and the party affiliation changes we had in the weeks before the deadline. Republicans picked up about 4,000 net new voters at the expense of both Democrats and independents, so they both lost voters in the party affiliation changes. So it's certainly, the Republicans are seeing a big increase in their number of voters.
Brian, did you see any problems today, or any reports of problems today at the any of the polling sites?
Nothing major. I mean, we haven't had any major catastrophes or anything, which is what we really hope to avoid. There's always little issues, technical glitches, complaints about electioneering and that sort of thing. But we didn't have any major issues or anything that we would consider, a serious problem that I'm aware of.
Okay. And when do you think we might know the absentee and early voting totals?
Well, I would expect to start seeing those come in just about any second now. Typically, the county election boards, once the polls close at 7 o'clock, they start feeding those results in, and they can be in pretty quick after the polls close. So I just keep refreshing my results here and just kind of expect to see them show up any minute now.
Okay, so you don't think Starlock will maintain this lead here on your
the 0-0-0 lead, correct? Yeah, I would expect we start to see some numbers come in soon. What we typically see is the early and absentee mail results come in very quickly after the polls close, and then there's a bit of a lag, and that happens for a couple of reasons. For one, if anybody's in line at 7 o'clock, the polls will stay open so those people can vote. So they'll get those people checked in, and they'll make sure they get to vote before they close down the polls. Then those folks have to actually drive the machines back to the county election board, and then they take a data stick or a thumb drive that's in the machine, and they upload that into their computers there, and then it uploads live on our website. So what we typically see is about 10 minutes or so we start to see those absentee results, and then there's a lull, and then 45 minutes, an hour, we start seeing some of those precincts start trickling in. So
looking forward to seeing those.
It's the always well-spoken Bryan Dean, this time coming at us from the Oklahoma State Election Board. Brian, how long has your day been so far?
Well, I've been here since 6:30 in the morning, and expect to be here till all the votes are counted. So if all goes well, maybe I'll get out of here by 11 or so, but it may be tomorrow before I leave the office. So we all come in expecting a pretty long day on election day. There's no way around that.
Well, sir, I know it's a busy day and a busy night for you. Thank you for your time. We certainly appreciate that, and good luck with everything.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks.
It's Bryan Dean from the Oklahoma State Election Board. Now, Phil, one of the things we're doing today is various reporters are going out into the field talking with voters earlier, some voter turnout, if you will, and they'll be at watch parties tonight. We'll kick it to a package now that we filed throughout the night. Your reporters were talking with various people about their experiences at the polls.
When you walked through the doors today, did you have any idea who you were going to vote for, or was it like that split-second decision when you were...
It was actually more of a split-second decision for me, because I initially had been a Hillary supporter for... well, since the last Democratic National Convention in 2008, and but I ended up voting for Bernie Sanders today. It is kind of really exciting, and if we're really down to these pretty extreme candidates on either side, I guess I would rather have that extreme than the other extremes.
Hillary, of course.
Hillary Clinton, of course.
Very much in agreement. And did you know walking in here that she was going to get your vote?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I've been waiting for 8 years to vote for her.
Really?
Yeah.
What is it about Hillary that you guys love?
Oh, she's such a smart woman. She is sharp. She knows politics. And I think she will get the job done.
I voted for Bernie Sanders because I think he best represents the ideals, morals, and the issues of the time. About a year ago, I didn't even know who he was. Then about 6 months ago, I kind of started figuring out who he was and had built up a liking to him. And then once I just went there, it was just icing on the cake.
I voted for Marco Rubio. I'm registered Republican, and I kind of tried to pick the lesser of the evils, at least from my point of view.
I voted for Donald Trump.
And you knew walking in the door that he was going to be the candidate. Tell me more about that choice.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Because I think he's the only one that can defeat Hillary Clinton. So I just don't think anyone else would have a chance that he has.
Who did you support today?
Bernie Sanders.
And why did you choose Bernie?
For his views on equality.
What did you kind of think of the field as a whole?
It's interesting and way too many Republicans and conservatives.
I think the Democratic Party has done a good job in doing that, but I think the Republican Party can learn from that, and that maybe showing who's worst isn't always best. I think that there is a lot of unity behind the Democratic Party, and I think sometimes in the Republican Party it's what have you done worse than somebody else, as opposed to who's more qualified going forward.
Places today in around the Oklahoma City metro area. Again, we will have reporters at watch parties tonight. There are 4 watch parties in play. Silas Allen, he's at Empire Slice. Me, myself, I'm jealous of that. That's the Bernie Sanders watch party. Darla Slipke is at the Hillary Clinton watch party. For Marco Rubio, we have Juliana Keeping, and Adam Kemp has the Trump and Cruz watch party. Phil, it'll be an interesting night to talk with them from those watch parties to see what the temperature is and how the people are feeling at these different watch parties.
Yeah, and I really thought we did a good job today of getting a sampling of a lot of different precincts around the city, and I think that was evident in that video package. We have a diverse electorate here, so we had people out in predominantly Hispanic precincts, predominantly African American precincts, white suburban precincts. So we wanted to cover the gamut as much as possible, and we'll be out there tonight trying to talk to officials and campaign supporters at some of these watch parties to get a read on where they go from here, regardless of what the results are. So,
Kelly, you got a full newsroom back there working tonight.
I do, and it cost me a few pizzas, but that's okay. It's always an exciting time during the election season. And I want to give a shout out to the volunteers who work the election polls, who are at the voting booths.
The people who hand out the
I voted
stickers.
That's what I'm trying to say. And next year in the general election, or later this year, I'm going to have Dave Cathy go out because the snacks that these people have are amazing.
It rivals the pizza we have here tonight?
I'm telling you, they've got crock pots, they've got little things of snacks. So I just think there's a story there.
Political tailgating.
That's right. That's right.
All right, we will be live throughout the night on newsok.com. Jump over to our Facebook page, the NewsOK Facebook page. I'll give you some behind-the-scenes look at the control room, the newsroom. They're not going to like that. The behind-the-scenes here of people getting mic'd up. I don't know. At the bottom of the hour, we'll talk to the Oklahomans Chris Castile from Washington and our Owen Canfield. And coming up at 7:15, here shortly, we will be talking with Jeanette Mendez and Keith Gaddy, some political science professors, to talk about some of the numbers that Bryan Dean mentioned earlier, the who, the what, the when, the why, all that stuff. So stick with us here on newsok.com. We'll be live throughout the night on Super Tuesdays from Election 2016 coverage.